Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Professor Anthony Killer, Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies, and Arise News Special Correspondent, Dan Warren. Gentlemen, you're welcome. Now to our first story. The South Korean President Moon Jae-in says North Korea wants to demilitarize the peninsula following his second meeting with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un this month. The North Korean leader has said he wants a summit with US President Donald Trump in Singapore to go ahead, according to the country's state media. Mr. Trump canceled the summit on Thursday, citing the North's hostility, but then came back after conciliatory messages from Pyongyang. President Moon's spokesman says there had been a candid exchange of views in the 2 hours of talks between the two leaders. Overnight, President Trump revealed the June 12 date for talks hasn't changed. Let's take a look at the video.
I just want to mention we're doing very well in terms of the summit with North Korea. Looks like it's going along very well. As you know, there are meetings going on as we speak in a certain location, which I won't name. You'd like the location. It's not so far away from here. And I think there's a lot of goodwill. I think people want to see if we can get the meeting and get something done. If we got that done, and if we can be successful in the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, it would be a great thing for North Korea. It would be a great thing for South Korea. It would be great for Japan and great for the world, great for the United States, great for China. A lot of people are working on it. It's moving along very nicely. So we're looking at June 12th in Singapore. That hasn't changed. And it's moving along pretty well. So we'll see what happens, okay? Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Congratulations.
Well done. Let me start with you. June 12 in Singapore, that hasn't changed, says President Trump. What's your take?
My take is, I think, because we were hearing various, as the Americans were saying, hostile language, so to speak, coming from North Korea, I think President Trump had no choice but to almost put his foot down. I think if you look at these two leaders, they've got such big egos, both of them, that they both want to be boss and they both want to look like they've arranged this summit.
I just want to mention,
I think
we're doing very
Pyongyang
well.
have certainly got a lot to lose. They're generally scared what could happen because we've seen with Iran and now Venezuela the sanctions that the US can put on them. So basically, if it looks like North Korea has thrown away this olive branch that we're seeing, then certainly there could be more complications. So I think President Trump had no choice but to put his foot down. And I think South Korea need to be highlighted for the work they're doing. It's all talk that Donald Trump is trying to make peace, but South Korea is certainly putting a lot of commitment, including the surprise meeting yesterday. It seems to be the reasonable voice and the calm between these two giant egos, I think.
Well, Killer, let me come to you. What do you think?
Two things come to mind, in this situation when this thing happened. First, I think it's crucial to realize that Kim and Trump are actually two kind of similar people. That's, one thing that strikes me. And it's always a tough nut when you're doing diplomacy and the leaders are so similar. You would think it's a good thing, but this is the kind of thing that happens out of it. The other thing that comes to mind, there's a lecture once done, actually it was an interview by Massimo D'Alema, who was a foreign Affairs Minister, and now he's Vice President of the European Center in Florence. And he once advised, they asked him to advise the US and Europe on diplomacy. And he once advised, he said that Europe should be less deliberate and more open. US should be less open and less should be more deliberate and less knee-jerk reaction. And I think what is playing out, the kind of diplomacy that Trump is playing is a sort of, I don't know, it's a Twitter age, modern day kind of diplomacy, which we're not really used to. I cannot remember the last time that somebody has published a letter that he sent to a foreign head of state. And, you know, he's pulled the plug because there were some tensions in the White House that they were dealing with. You have the Hawks and the Dolphins out there, and they couldn't find a synthesis between these two antitheses. And the moment he decided, those who followed a series of events said that until the time he decided the talks were not going to hold anymore, hours before they were still saying maybe it's going to hold. And then all of a sudden he said, no, we're not doing it. And he sent a letter. When you react that way, things are not stable. Then you can change, you can open negotiation, close it. It's a very new, fragile terrain for observers at least, and I think for experts as well.
Well, Prof, I mean, is this triumph of diplomacy at the end of the day, or, you know, there are still doubts about the sincerity of purpose on the part of the parties involved?
I will agree with the later part of your submission. There are doubts. What is playing, what we are witnessing, is nothing more than, you know, conflict in the struggle for sovereign equality. The Americans are claiming, all right, superiority in all its ramifications. And the North Koreans are saying, of course, you can lay claim to that. Why not us too? You see, what is happening at the end of the day is that the North Koreans are simply telling the Americans that the extent of the territoriality of their power cannot go beyond the international boundaries of the United States. As much as we want to agree with Daniel in his explanation, you see, in diplomacy, even if it is gradually being digitized with tweetings, the problem is that a foreign minister, a president, a government official cannot tell a sovereign state like North Korea is that if you do not comply with our wishes that you denuclearize, then we will give you the Libyan model of treatment. All right?
Well,
the issue now is, what is this Libyan model? First of all, the first leg of it, Muammar Gaddafi was made to do away with his nuclear project in 2003. Yeah. Thereafter, he was ousted, regime change, he was killed.
Yes.
Now, Libyan model for the North Korean simply means, okay, you will first of all denuclearize, after we'll get you killed. Yeah. Please, for any head of state, even if it's not normal, all right, to be told that you either come to this meeting in Singapore, the conclusion of the meeting already,
you heard it there.
Or it's already put there.
Yeah, but Prof, I mean, the North Korean president, he says he's committed to complete denuclearization. Yeah, what does that really mean in real terms? Please.
Denuclearization, if you go by the 1968 treaty, non-proliferation treaty, one article defines a nuclear power, a weapon state, nuclear weapon state, as any country that had already successfully That word is there, successfully. It's even bold. Yeah, in the agreement. All right? Successfully tested nuclear weapons. So, and which countries are these? They are basically the P5, the permanent members
Of the Security
of the
Council.
Security Council. So now they do not want any other country
To join them.
because they do not have any trust in them. They call them rogue states. And North Korea has argued right from the beginning, and please don't forget that North Korea was also part and parcel of the treaty it signed before it withdrew its membership. It's now saying that America is a threat to their own security survival. So this is the issue.
Anyway, I think the important thing is that, you know, a dialogue process is being initiated. And there are persons who are hoping that President Trump will be able to broker peace successfully at the end of the day in the Korean Peninsula. And I think some people have even recommended him for the Nobel Peace Prize. You know.
But this is most unfortunate itself. You see, if North Korea will agree to complete denuclearization, you asked, what does it mean? The issue is that North Korea wanted to acquire perfection.
Yes.
And that had been done, and they feel that they are satisfied. They can now do away.
We have to go on break. It's time now for a break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be discussing the Catholics' protest against the killing in Benue State by herdsmen. Don't go away. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Catholic Church members on Tuesday had a peaceful nationwide protest to register their displeasure over the killings of 2 priests and 17 other members of the church by suspected herdsmen in Benue State. The protests, which were led by various bishops in several states, had people carrying placards that read, "No more killing, Christians are citizens too. We say no to herdsmen killing." In the light of the protests, the Sultan of Sokoto cautioned Christian leaders in the country against religious war, reminding Christian leaders that more Muslims have been killed by Boko Haram than Christians. Prof, do you agree?
Well, the observation does not reflect the situational reality on the ground. If the Sultan is suggesting that more Muslims have been killed by Boko Haram, were they killed by Christians? Were they killed by Boko Haram Christians? All right? Boko Haram is known to be a terrorist organization, nationally and internationally. And the issue now is that we are talking about Fulani herdsmen. All right? And the Catholics are asking government to put an effective stop to the killings. Why should that one now be interpreted to mean a religious war? Does that mean that the Christians, the Catholics are asking or are saying that it is the Muslims that are killing Christians? No. They are talking about herdsmen, Fulani herdsmen killing. And unless the Sultan is now telling the whole world that herdsmen are synonymous with Muslims, and in that case, then there will be a logical consistency in the something. For that one, I think it is the Sultan now that is already unnecessarily inviting a religious war in the country, and there is no good basis for that.
Well, Anthony Killer, let me come to you. I mean, the protest was peaceful across the country. What do you think of this in the context of what is called liberation theology, the prophetic church, the church of the poor?
Exactly. Yes. I'm actually impressed with that question, because that was what I was thinking. We should note that this is historical in Nigeria. The Catholic Church has never been militant. It has been influential. It has been, theologically strong, but it's not been militant in Nigeria. I can't think of any protest. And I think the Sultan, for saying this, has missed a golden chance to shut up, really, to put it very bluntly. Because when an organization like this comes out to say, stop the killing, It is something that should be embraced. If I were a Muslim leader, if I were the Sultan, I would go and march with them and say, in a very economical way, let us do it together. Let us protest against the killing of human beings. And that would be a more humanitarian approach. The idea of saying that because any kind of religious movement is protesting or is rallying for lives, and that should be the key, for lives, not against anything. Anybody against that is in trouble, really. That doesn't make good historical stance, and that worries me.
But you know, the Catholic Bishops' Conference
Yes.
that ordered, the protest,
protest.
they even went a step further.
Yes.
In April, they had asked President Buhari to resign.
Yes.
You know, if he's unable to stop
handle
the
it,
spate
yes,
of killings
yes.
in Nigeria and ensure the security of lives
Yes, indeed,
and
yes,
property.
yes.
Well, let me come to you, Dan. This conflict between church and the state, do you think that the church taking up this matter, has taken the right step?
I think I agree with what you're saying, that it shouldn't be seen as religion against the state. It should be seen as people protesting against killings. If the church are one of the only organisations that want to do this, then they're doing something of good. It should be the mass people saying to the government, do something about these killings, because obviously, my day job, so to speak, here at Arise, we're having to report killing after killing after killing, and something's got to be done. And, I always think as long as the protests are peaceful, that's the key. Because if when they start getting out of hand and the protests are causing more violence than what you're protesting about, the whole idea of what your message is becoming very, very, very hazy.
And
so
that's a crucial thing that Dan is saying, because they hold the moral authority because they're able to protest and keep the peaceful side of it. To the question of the call for resignation, you might disagree with it if you think the president is doing a good job, but the logic and the consistency is very clear. The Catholic the Bishops' Conference look at the situation where the chief security officer is not capable of safeguarding lives. What do you do if you have a gateman that cannot save your house? You sack him. So what they've asked for the president to do is that if you can't save our lives, go home. It makes a lot of sense.
But you see, Prof, the danger in the pronouncement of the
Bishop.
No, not the bishop.
The Sultan. Yeah.
The Sultan.
No.
Is should not be taken lightly at all when you look at the implication
Of it, yeah.
For instance, if the Sultan is saying that we should be careful not to get to the stage of religious war, what does it really mean?
Yeah.
In Nigeria, we have three religions, basically: Muslim, Christian, and the non-believers.
Yeah.
Now, the non-believers,
No, but the indigenous religion.
indigenous religion,
They believe, yes.
now they don't pose any threat
Yes,
to anyone.
absolutely.
So when we are talking about religious wars, we are talking about the likelihood of a misunderstanding between the Muslims and the Christians.
Yes.
Now, if the Christians are now being accused, all right, they are now being told that beware, be cautious of a religious war. Then, Sultan is now saying that at the end of the day, the Muslims are supporting the herdsmen, that they are on their side. Because the issue now is not Muslim killing the Christian, but the herdsmen. So they are now telling us that they have sympathy already for the herdsmen. That's what they are saying. And
Well,
there's need
but
for
Prof,
caution.
I think what the Catholic Church in Nigeria has done, more or less, is to pass a vote of no confidence on President
But absolutely.
Buhari.
Yes,
and
very clearly.
the Catholic Church is quite a strong
That's what they call constituent in the country.
constituency in the country. Do you see this affecting his electoral chances? Because, these priests, they could just go to the pulpit and say, don't vote for this man. And we've seen that happen before in Nigeria. You think it could affect the president's chances in the
It's not that
coming elections?
it can or it could. It will.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So there's no probability there. One, because the whole problems in Nigeria,
Yes.
all right, are being solved at the level of the altars in the various churches. People now carry their faith as a whatever to the church. And they always listen to sermons.
Well,
So-
on that note, we'll take another break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be discussing President Buhari's statement about former President Olusegun Obasanjo and the Nigerian Senate. Don't go away. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. President Muhammadu Buhari on Tuesday attacked former President Olusegun Obasanjo, accusing him of spending $16 billion on the power sector without anything to show for it. This will be the first time the president will publicly accuse former President Obasanjo, who has been very vocal in opposing President Buhari's bid to seek a second term. The president didn't end his attack with his predecessor. He also attacked members of the National Assembly, saying some of them have been in the National Assembly for 10 years without any record of notable achievements. Right or wrong, Anthony Killer?
Right or wrong? Well, yeah, it is true. Some people have been in the National Assembly for over 10 years without any notable achievement. That's correct. And we should applaud the president for saying that. I doubt the timing because he's been there for 3.5 years and he has just read this day to discover that. I don't know what's going on. The timing is not great, but I doubt that. I'm waiting for the National Assembly to come back to him because those ones don't keep quiet. They're going to fight back. Let's give them to next week. For the Obasanjo one, I find it very fascinating because I don't know if consciously or not, but the presidency have decided to recognize and endorse Obasanjo as the leader of opposition. Because the consequence of doing this is that they're going to shift, if it continues this way, they're going to shift the trajectory of the discussion of 2019, not Buhari versus the past, i.e. Jonathan anymore, but the figure will now be Obasanjo. The benefit for the citizens is that it will force former President Obasanjo to give account of his 8 years in office. The benefit for the citizens is that it will force Buhari to now face a president that ruled at a time of similar economic variables. Because part of the thing that was wrong with the statement the current president made is the average price of crude oil. And that was, a very blatant error. I'm very worried how I can make that kind of error. In a very quick calculation, we showed you that the figures he gave were wrong. But it's politics. He might be able to get away with it if the fragmented opposition allows him. But what he has done, and let's see how it plays out. It could be, if they are deliberate and they have a plan, great plan. But if it's an error, it could be a very fatal error for him because by endorsing Obasanjo as the leader of opposition, he has given him what he didn't even have.
Well, Prof, is this a question of endorsement? President Obasanjo himself has already reacted. He has released the report of the House of Representatives Investigation Committee on this particular issue of $16 billion and the power sector. He has also referred President Buhari to chapters in his book, My Watch, with a caveat that if the president himself cannot read the book, then he should get some of his aides to read and then, explain to him in a language that he would possibly understand. So we've had this in the public domain for a while, for a few days. What do you think?
The two of you are correct. We can talk about endorsement. And at the end of the day, we can also say, look, it's not like that. Endorsement from the perspective that, look, Olusegun Obasanjo had made it clear that he was no longer interested in politics, in party politics, all those things. He prefers to be a kingmaker, an advisor, to ensure that we do not go astray. So in this case, by simply now raising issues with the achievements or failures of Olusegun Obasanjo, he is necessarily indirectly, all right, endorsing him as an opposition to deal with. It's an issue.
Especially because he has just floated a party.
Precisely.
He's not part of it.
But he's guiding it.
Yeah.
So in this case, at the end of the day, and that's where you are right, you know, what will eventually happen is that we will now have a more powerful opposition, you know, a group of opposition leaders. Jonathan is not sleeping. Others, all right, are there to contend with. So the extent to which Buhari can effectively deal with a more and better organized Olusegun Obasanjo will be a major issue. Now, as to the failure of people staying in the National Assembly for 10 years, no achievement, I think that one is at best very subjective.
But Prof, can I just know about the OBJ thing? So do you agree that maybe Buhari has gone to, he should have let sleeping dogs lie? Maybe he has actually gone to put his hand where he shouldn't have?
No, you see, I wouldn't address the problem from the perspective you are raising it.
Yeah.
The issue is that from what had been published so far, the $16 billion reportedly incurred on power.
Yes.
Now, no one has indicted Obasanjo as an individual.
Well, that's the point.
Second point, the statement has it that X company, Y company, received
Certain amount.
X amount of money. The mere fact that you can even identify the recipients of the money, and none of the companies had been traced
Or indicted.
or indicted.
Yeah, in actual fact, see, there was an article written by late engineer Folúṣèké Shomolu,
Yes.
who was involved in the
process.
independent power project under Obasanjo. You recall that the Yar'Adua government also investigated this particular matter.
Precisely.
And Shomolu was summoned to explain certain things.
And report was
and he later wrote an article in which he explained how the thing, played out. And he was saying, look, the money was actually not $16 billion, that it was something much lower than that. And he gave an account
You see, I have a
of
take
how...
on this thing. I think this view in which you just throw things like this kind of pedestrian way of this administration of handling matters. Then these are the kind of things you say while drinking pepper soup and beer, and you just throw things out.
Are you saying that President Buhari takes pepper soup?
Definitely not these days.
Anyway,
Let's
now,
wrap
quickly,
it
before we leave this subject, I mean, you've been in Nigeria for some time.
Yes.
And you must have seen the incumbent president and former presidents, exchanging brickbats, almost at loggerheads. Is this normal?
No, it's not. I was, having come from the UK, generally, when a prime minister stands down, it's very rare does a former prime minister even have an opinion. Maybe something like when it was the EU referendum, they would have their say, like Tony Blair came out of the woodwork and defended why Britain should have voted to stay in the EU. But it's very rare. And if we look at, for example, Obama, he could have returned on Donald Trump so many times, but he hasn't done so. And it's almost seen as I've done my time. And the fact is, if you start criticizing, then your record starts to get dug out. And if you've left on a high note, leave it that, because if people start bringing
Although, of course, you're Margaret Thatcher. You can come out once in a while. Thatcher came out once in a while. But we must say this, at least I personally, I'm for the theory of the continuous conflict amongst elites. It is good for the citizenry when the elites are not in peace together. So if OBJ is fighting Buhari and this other person is fighting that other, it's good for the citizenry. Because
So they can conspire.
so they
against
can
the
conspire against the people. That's my
I
way.
will agree with
so
you.
in that way, I'm going to thank OBJ for coming back into the fray.
We should not allow such situation to develop into the level of a conflict. Crisis, yes. When it gets to a conflicting level, you may not be in the position to manage it well. It can be, the way they are going about it. And as Dan has rightly pointed out, look,
Yeah,
I
because
think
the conflict is more at the level of ego rather than
precisely so.
ideas. That's what makes it
I
problematic.
understand it, but I will play conflict over conspiracy.
Well, let's take another break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be taking the story on Amnesty International's shocking report on the Nigerian military. We'll be back. Back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Human rights organization Amnesty International on Thursday released a report accusing the Nigerian security forces of abusing women and children taking refuge in internally displaced camps in the northeastern parts of the country. The report reveals details of how the Nigerian military and civilian joint task force separated women from their husbands and confined them in remote satellite camps where they were raped, sometimes in exchange for food. Osai Ojigo, director of Amnesty International Nigeria, said, "It is absolutely shocking that people who had already suffered so much under Boko Haram have been condemned to further horrendous abuse by the Nigerian military." Dan, I'll start with you. Now, each time a report of this nature comes out, either from Amnesty International or Transparency International, the stock response of the Nigerian government is to say it's not true. And already, even in this case, the military authorities, they've rejected the report. What's your take? Is it possible that Amnesty International will lie against the Nigerian government?
I would say it's very doubtful that they would lie. I mean, they've got no reason. It wouldn't give them anything to lie. I think that the fact is that sometimes these reports can be, the truth can be stretched slightly so things can sound worse than what they actually are. But the fact is there are too many reports like this that have come out saying that there are such dreadful circumstances these poor women are facing, that it's time that the governments do something. The government does something about it. I mean, Amnesty International has no power. They can highlight this on the world stage, and obviously it doesn't do anything for the country's reputation. I mean, I've been to Nigeria so many times, and when I first went, in the nicest possible way, people said, "Why are you going? It's, you know, it's not safe, it's not this, it's not that." And actually, it's a really nice country, but it's headlines like this that come out on the international stage that really tarnish it. And rather than saying it's not true, and things have happened like this in the British military, the American military, the governments investigate and crack down on it. And unless the governments are willing to open their eyes, you're just going to keep getting Groundhog Day with the same reports from similar organizations.
Prof?
Well, Shakespeare told us in Macbeth that there is no art of finding the human construction from the face. What does that mean? There is no society, organization, individual on whose face will never tell lie or will tell lie. In other words, contrary to the position of Daniel, that it's not likely Amnesty International will tell us. International Amnesty, Amnesty International, call it whichever way you want, can tell lies if need be. The only thing is that under normal circumstances, Amnesty International, based on the fact that they engage on field research, they are very scientific in their something. You wouldn't expect them. But the truth is that Amnesty International, like many other civil society organizations, research centers, they are instruments of global governance. And the state parties, all right, international community, can make use of any one of them. I will just give you one or two examples without expatiating on them. When the Americans were to deal with Iraq, all right, the international communities, the agencies, IETA in Vienna said, look, Iraq didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. America insisted that it had. Yeah. All right? And at the end of the day, the agenda of the Americans was clear. Please, there's no big deal in anybody writing report. I'm not saying Amnesty International report is not valid. It may be. But the issue is that there's no big deal that they cannot do so. Libya, regime change. When the Western countries, the allies, did not want him, was it not the same story? Please, North Korea. No, in fact, the latest one is Iran, the Iranian nuclear deal. America does not believe that Iran has been complying with the spirit, with the context, with the obligation of the Comprehensive Joint Plan of Action. So please.
But Prof, you see, apart from Amnesty International, even Nigerian newspapers, NGOs, you know, they visited some of these IDP camps, and they've reported, you know, about human rights abuses, the poor condition of people, you know, and all of that. And the military is even in a position to do its own research, to investigate. But you just find that anytime anybody criticizes, you know, we just go on the defense. Anyway,
we go defensive because you see, in a way, Nigeria is like that book or student of philosophy who was done sophism, relativism, conspiracy, but has never done rational fact-finding epistemology or research. We've built a nation in where everything can be debated, where everything can be said, oh, it's because it's from your area or because you have interest. We've fallen into a very cheap kind of relativism. The right reaction, if anybody accuses an institution of something, is to say, we take this thing very seriously and we shall investigate it. Stop.
Which is a dance point.
Which is dance point. And then you follow up to investigate it. Now, let us leave out the status of Amnesty International and let's look at this. As you rightly said, is it true or not that the Nigerian military has a tradition and a habit of maltreating people? Is it true or not that without Amnesty International, local papers and local observers are already reporting bad things going on? You don't really need Amnesty International. You see, the problem with us is that we look for big endorsements from outside, then we can't deal with it. Amnesty International, as the Prof rightly said, and then he lost me because he was still going on that relative thing, as he rightly says, they do serious field work. There are many things that we don't know. When they talk about rape, unfortunately, ill-treating people, they have cases, they have situations, they have locations. Their report is not just a general, I think, I suspect.
They back it up with
They
facts.
back it up. It's always text in context, and everything is well documented.
Well, I think we should recommend to the Nigerian military and other relevant authorities to at least read the report.
And sit with
because
them.
these reactions just come like that. You know, they don't
And we
even
give
read
them the
report.
pages, and if they can't read it, find somebody that can translate it to a language they know.
Well, you should give the copyright on that to Obasanjo. But Prof, quickly, before we leave this subject, there's a sub-theme in it, this theme about rape. It's so rampant in Nigeria these days. What is it with Nigerian men that rape has become a special attraction?
I think you're asking me the most difficult question. It's not limited to the military. You see people in the church, even pastors, now raping 10-year-old people, 8-year-old people, impregnating them. Now, what is responsible? Could it be hunger? I really do not know. However, I can begin to look at a situation whereby societal values,
Falling down.
all right, are unnecessarily on the decline. We don't have any value anymore.
Anymore that goes out.
All right? In Nigeria of today, look,
Anything goes.
what do we not celebrate?
Yeah, any wrong.
Now, people who are honest, I've been saying that, people who are honest, who engage in dint of hard work, who are patriotic all along, they are the people that are consciously maligned. The system will frustrate them
That is true.
to the extent that it has become unnecessary.
But Prof,
to
let me
be-
agree with the latter part of your point and disagree with the first part.
Okay.
I think it's not new. We're just seeing it more. It is information and technologies that tips. There is no general increase in abuse and rape. It has always been there. It's just that now we get to hear about it more. and ask people to look around. If you move with women, you'll be shocked when you get friendly with women, the amount of women that have either been raped or suffered attempted rape in their lives. If you do that kind of statistics, just stop it. It's a very sad thing, and I think it's something we need to look at seriously. And it's a global thing. It's a problem of humanity. I've lived in several countries in the world, and one of the sad things I've seen is the stories of individuals who will tell you of attempted rape, if not, proper rape.
Why are men so sexually
It's the animal instinct.
aggressive now at this point in time? Why? Because the question we are yet to answer. The issue now is rape has been there. But why is it that we are even having more of the reports? You have given technology as a possible reason. Yeah. But I think in the village, all right, we have occurrences like that. Yeah, and they are not used to.
It's probably not a question that we can fully answer in a matter of minutes, but I mean, it's a poser also for people who are listening to us out there. We'll take another short break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be discussing children's rights. Don't go away. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. And to our last topic, today, May 27th, marks Children's Day in Nigeria. A day recognized to celebrate children, it also serves as an opportunity to discuss several issues confronting the Nigerian child. In the light of this, President Buhari has charged the federal government to take decisive steps to ensure the protection of children, while the Senate President, Bukola Saraki, has taken the opportunity of the day's celebrations to renew the widespread calls for the immediate release of the lone Dapchi schoolgirl, Leah Sharibo, and the remaining Chibok girls still being held in captivity by Boko Haram insurgents. Now, the theme for Children's Day today globally is creating safe spaces for children, our collective responsibility. Dan, how much of a collective responsibility is it?
Well, I think that there's a responsibility from community, from parents, from government. I think everybody is responsible to a degree, working together to make a child's safety secure, not just physically, but also, especially in the UK, cyber security and not just the UK, but that seems to be children are in danger by being online, speaking to people, being influenced and by various regimes. So it's very important that everybody takes an active role because they are the next generation, whether we like it or not. It's called life and it happens. And if children today don't get the opportunities, or we hear talks where they become segregated or marginalized, radicalized, we'll end up destroying future society. So everybody has an active part to play because you are part, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're a post-delivery man, you are part of a child's life in some respect.
Well, Prof, I mean, we already discussed an aspect of this when we were talking about rape. I mean, children are particularly vulnerable in many ways. Child sex abuse is a problem. And you also have, violence against children. Now, take a look at this issue about the rights of children. There is a child rights bill in Nigeria that was passed, at the federal level, but some states, in fact, most of the states in the north have refused, to endorse or domesticate that child rights bill on the grounds that, look, child marriages are allowed, in that part of the country. I think today provides us an opportunity to comment a little on this.
I cannot agree more with you. You see, safe space for the children may not be different from a safe space for the generality of the people. It is not easy to delineate, frontiers for them. You look at what is happening in the US. They go to schools, secondary schools, take gun and kill them.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, in Nigeria, some of our compatriots refuse to domesticate, all right, for various cultural reasons. You will now discover that if the whole environmental conditioning in a given polity, if it is safe, the old, the young, the child, the elder will be safe. So I think that at the end of the day, the critical problem in Nigeria is insecurity, all right? The broad base of which now is further, enlarging. I think that at the end of the day, if the leaders of tomorrow are really to become leaders, because you cannot become leader if you are dead, all right? You need to exist to be a leader in the future. Now, the environment in the country, because of its character of insecurity, has to be seriously, constructively, effectively addressed. It is by so doing that May 27 can be given a good meaning. That is, May 27 should be a day where we should sit down and discuss all these threats to security of life and property.
Well, Antonio Kila, yes.
Well, when I saw the theme, anytime I see collective, I get worried. I'm always afraid somebody's going to defraud me when it's a collective. I like to know where individuals stand.
Okay, will you prefer shared responsibility?
I think, yes, then at some point, somebody should then expatiate and say we have institutional responsibility, we have pastoral responsibility, we have societal responsibility.
Parental responsibility.
So they should break it down. And you know what will be good? When the students go back, and I say to all the schools and teachers watching us, when the students go back on Monday in schools across the world, a good discussion should be divide the class into groups and let them discuss each of these responsibility. What should the state be doing? What should the school be doing? What should parents be doing to keep children safe?
You are right, but it's still collective responsibility.
Yes,
the only
totally,
thing is
but
that
let's
you are
break it
breaking
down.
the responsibilities to the level of the stakeholders.
Yes, it's very crucial to break it down, because when they say let people do, nobody does.
Yes.
So break it down to what each one is doing will be a very helpful thing.
But I think that, in Nigeria, apart from the general issue of security, we also need to stress the point about education, educating the Nigerian child.
Educating Nigerian child.
Yes, I think that's a major area.
And leadership, because to the
failure.
point you're saying that some parts of the country are refusing to endorse or domesticate an international agreement. It's a failure of leadership, because what you need to do is, if you are in charge and Nigeria is a secular republic, a federal republic, somebody needs to say, in Nigeria, this is the law.
Correct. Anyway, we've got to go. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. For my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.